July is here, and we are trying to set the like record in the month of July on the Cowboys Report. We got to 968 last year. Let's get to an even 1,000 on today's video. Help us out by liking the video, please, and thank you. Following the Jalen Ramsey Minkah Fitzpatrick Jonnu Smith blockbuster, we're talking trade rumors on today's show. The Miami Dolphins are reportedly trying to trade for a tight end, per this report from Tom Pelissero, who says they are in conversations with multiple teams about acquiring a new tight end following the Jonnu Smith trade. Could the Cowboys be a potential option? Jake Ferguson is in line to be the tight end 1. Luke Schoonmaker, the former second-round pick, is tight end 2. Brevin Spanford, who I know many of us have some hope for, some excitement over, is tight end 3. John Stevens coming off the injury. Princeton Fant, UDFA's Rivaldo Fairweather, Tyler Neville. I think one guy stands out as a particular potential trade candidate, and that's Luke Schoonmaker. One of the Dolphins Sports Illustrated subsites mentioned Schoonmaker as a trade target, and frankly, that's who I'd most consider moving as well, from a blend of the potential that you could get back and how it would impact your own roster, since by no means are you sellers. Schoonmaker has not lived up to any of the expectations placed on him. I would even argue as a run blocker too, which we'll get into later on. Since the Cowboys made him a second-round pick, there was that run on tight ends. They got a little bit nervous, and they took the need pick, and that normally gets the Cowboys in trouble. He was better this past year. Didn't have any drops after really a really bad rookie campaign. But 241 yards is not what anyone's aiming for out of a second-round pick at tight end. Here's the contract, by the way. A trade of Luke Schoonmaker would allow the Cowboys to save not a lot, $1.32 million, but it's doable. The Dolphins would owe him a non-guaranteed 2 years, $2.92 million contract. So it's cheap. It's affordable. It actually does make some sense for Miami, who, I'm sure they'd love to get Kyle Pitts. I don't know how realistic that actually is. Although we saw one blockbuster in late June, early July. Maybe we could see another. More on this to come, and more trade rumors, obviously. But what would you do with Luke Schoonmaker? T for trade, K for keep. Let me know in the comments section, the pinned comment, by the way, of today's show. When it comes to potentially trading Luke Schoonmaker to the Dolphins, if you truly trust your depth, which the Cowboys may or may not, it is a conversation at least worth having internally. Now, I don't know what you'd actually be able to get for Luke Schoonmaker. I don't think the value is particularly high for a former second-round pick who has not lived up to expectations. I think you're looking at maybe a late day 3 draft pick. And we've talked about Luke Schoonmaker before, and I've been like, I don't know if this is going to happen. I do think the Dolphins, being now in kind of desperate need of a tight end, does potentially increase the value you'd be able to get, where it might be more worthwhile for you as opposed to just dumping him altogether. So I'm not going to fully rule it out right now. In an ideal world, by the way, it'd be nice to get a player back for Luke Schoonmaker and not just a 6th or whatever round pick. The Dolphins have no corners. Cross that off the list. They're not going to trade you Devon Achane or Jalen Wright, as fun as that would be. Maybe a defensive lineman could be an option. The Dolphins, I'll give them credit, they really overhauled this defensive line room this offseason. They're obviously not going to trade you Kenneth Grant. They just drafted Jordan Phillips. They just drafted Zeke Biggers. They did add Matthew Butler. They fairly recently. They have Matt Dickerson. You're not going to get Zach Jones or Zach Sealer. Could Benito Jones be an option if they just want to ride with Kenneth Grant? I wouldn't actually totally rule that one out. Maybe, again, that's kind of a longer shot option. Maybe that's one that's worth monitoring, keeping an eye out for. I think the more likely outcome, though, is you just get a day 3 pick back. A bit more than what you got. You got something for Peyton Hendershot. You should definitely get something for Luke Schoonmaker. It's a question of whether or not the value is good enough for you to pull the trigger on that deal. Speaking of deals, these Cowboys shorts are available for 40% off. Chatsports.com/Cowboys shorts. Athletic wear, sleep wear, whatever you want to do, workout, sleep in them. It gets hot these days. You don't want to be wearing pants. Links in the comments section and the description of today's show. It's chatsports.com/Cowboys shorts. I do want to mention the other tight ends here on the Cowboys roster. I don't think a Jake Ferguson trade makes any sense. Like, that is your tight end one. If the Cowboys were to trade away Jake Ferguson and trot out Luke Schoonmaker, Brevin Spanford, we'd be like, you got to go get a new tight end. You're in bad shape at that room. So there's no reason to self-inflict the impact in that regard. I think all of us were extremely disappointed and I think Fergie was too. He's made that comment, by the way he played last season. I think it is also reasonable to think, or at least hope, that he can bounce back to the 2023 version, which was fringe-ish top 10 tight end play somewhere in that benchmark. I don't really think it makes any sense to trade him away unless you're just getting blown away by an offer, which you're not going to. He's coming off of a down year, right? I do have some hope for Brevin Spanford long-term. Like, the Cowboys seem to have had some good buzz on him. We'll go more in depth on him on a future video, by the way. But no one's trading for him right now. Like, that's very much like we like this young under-the-radar guy, so we're going to keep him and move on from the guy ahead of him. Like, that's the type of player you have in Spanford. He had 88 yards last year. Like, that's not undrafted free agent. There's no draft pedigree like you have with Luke Schoonmaker. There's not any real trade value with him. So overall, when it comes to the tight end room, what's your confidence level? Scale it for me from 1 to 10 in the comment section of today's show. Let's move to a potential Darnell Washington trade. A to Z Sports pitched this idea of the Cowboys going after the Steelers tight end, and I would be lying to you if I hadn't also thought about it a little bit. The issue here is the lack of production. It's not that dissimilar from the complete lack of Luke Schoonmaker production. Washington was a later round pick. He's a better blocker, as we'll get into, by the way. But there were, I think if you trust the consensus draft board coming out, a lot of people like Washington more than Luke Schoonmaker, and I think that is still not clouding, but still impacting the views of how we feel about him. One thing he does great, he'll block his ass off for you. The top run-blocking tight ends per PFF last year, this is a minimum of 150 run-blocking snaps to kind of weed out guys that barely played or guys that were kind of not used in that role. Like an Evan Ingram, for example, like wasn't asked to block really at all, but was a pass catcher. Josh Oliver, who just got paid, number one. He's a pure run-blocking tight end. I think he's the best in the NFL. George Kittle, Andrew Ogletree, Hunter Long, ironically was part of the Jalen Ramsey trade originally with the Rams and Dolphins, so kind of funny. And then Darnell Washington. He's number 5. His asks, what he is asked to do is more challenging than a lot of guys. Like, he'll straight up block defensive ends because he's a huge human being. To put that in perspective, the Cowboys' run-blocking grades were not good. All these guys, for the most part, were better in 2023. Schoonmaker was way better in 2023. He struggled in 2024. Again, he was often asked to block tight ends or defensive ends, and he had some issues with it. He'd be an upgrade with what you have, I think. Contract worth mentioning here again, by the way, $1.24 million with their save. Cowboys owe a non-guaranteed 2 years, $2.72 million. So I think I know the answer to this one, and then we'll go more in depth in it. Would you trade for Darnell Washington? Y for yes, N for no. Let me know in the comment section of today's show. It might end up being a little bit of a pipe dream, but I do have interest in trying to get Darnell Washington from the Pittsburgh Steelers. He is stuck in that blocking tight end 3 role now in Pittsburgh. Now, look, they're going to use a lot of 3 tight end sets. They will deploy Washington and Jonnu Smith and Pat Freiermuth together, but this is at least worth a call if talent acquisition really is a 365-day-a-year business. Get told no. I think you get better at tight end by adding Washington. I think you could try to ship off Schoonmaker. Look, the pass-catching impact hasn't really been there, but the usage, the opportunities haven't really been there either. One key note I want to mention here. I don't think Darnell Washington's medically checked out for the Dallas Cowboys pre-draft. That is why he fell to Pittsburgh in the first place in that class. It's why all those teams passed on him, why the Cowboys brought him in for a 30 visit and did not take him. I've also got, it's a galaxy brain idea, but it's July. It's fine. Could you send Schoonmaker to Miami? Could you send him there, get something back for him, and then you end up with Darnell Washington still in a separate trade or a 3-team trade? That's very much a Madden trade, and maybe you have to balance the picks in some capacity, but I'm intrigued by it. It is Madden, so I asterisk it, but I think it's worth mentioning here. All right, we are trying to get to 218,000 subscribers here on the Cowboys Report. We're going to keep doing daily videos multiple times today. Another one later this afternoon. Hit that sub button so you don't miss out. YouTube.com/@CowboysTV. One more thing, again, tying into this Washington or the Ramsey, etc. trade. Following that trade, Adam Schefter reported there was trade interest in TJ Watt. He put this on Twitter. I'll just do a quote because there was a lot of text involved. It says, sources, in recent weeks, multiple teams have been discussing whether they can trade for Steelers standout TJ Watt, who skipped the team's most recent minicamp. Pittsburgh hasn't shown any willingness to deal Watt so far, but he's unhappy with his contractual situation, and sources believe outside team interest is likely to increase given today's trade. Schefter then immediately followed up with, well, not immediately, like 5 minutes later, of Steelers are adamant they want Watt to finish his career in Pittsburgh. Here's what happened. Then we're going to the Cowboys side. Watt's agent sent this to Adam Schefter. Like, that was very clearly, agent now is like, let me push this to get my guy paid. And then the Steelers pushed back with, we're not doing that, Adam, please clarify. Because Pelissero had almost the exact same tweet at the exact same time on this bottom one. They're not going to trade him. Look, this obviously isn't going to happen for the Cowboys. Like, they're not going to go trade for TJ Watt. I'll joke about Taco Charlton trade up there all the time on social media. But it is a reminder, like, hey, maybe pay Micah Parsons first, because there will be a Watt resolution this offseason. And you don't want to be the last one in line. Like, call the agent, pick up the phone, get it done, quit playing games. Like, there's no benefits to waiting if you are the Cowboys. So, just do it. And we can all have the instant reaction live show enjoyment once they do that.